I'd like to start by saying welcome everybody to the Sustainable Design Special Interest Group webinar series. In 2020, we have decided to carry out a number of different webinars on sustainable design topics. And we are happy today to welcome Sophie to talk about engineering decisions and sustainability. But before we do that, I just want to provide you a brief introduction about us and our key activities so that you understand the overall concept for that. My name is Daniela Pegos, Associate Professor at the Technical University of Denmark and also the Chair of the Sustainable Design Special Interest Group. And the Sustainable Design SIG is actually only one out of 16 different special interest groups of the Design Society, which has the main goal to bridge the gap between research and practice in sustainable design. Within the Design Society, we are part of a broad community with more than 800 different participants, both from industry but also from academia, which have a shared goal of developing and promoting design, and design in a broad sense, design of products, of services, of systems, and so forth. We are spread in more than 50 different countries, and there are a number of different events happening almost every day within the Design Society. So if you want to hear more about us and to see what are the different types of activities, research, and industry application that we do, I'd like to invite you to visit our website. It's designsociety.org, where you can find more information about the society as a whole. And without taking any extra time, I'd like to introduce Sophie Hallstedt, which is a co-chair of the Sustainable Design SIG. She's also an associate professor at the Blekinge Institute of Technology in Sweden, and her research is focused on how to have a strategic, social, ecological perspective into sustainability and how to integrate that into the companies at the operational, tactical, and also strategic levels. Today, she's going to talk to us about how can engineering decisions contribute to a sustainable society. And she's going to share some insights of her research, but also her very strong collaboration with industry in Sweden. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please just add that in the Q&A box. And then after she finishes, we'll have time for discussion as well. So it's over to you, Sophie. Welcome, and thanks for coming here today.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you. So then I will continue from here. As Daniela said, I'm from Blekinge Institute of Technology in Sweden, and my research passion is to strengthen industry's capacity to develop sustainable solutions. And during my research period, since I started as a PhD student, I have been working very closely with industry in my different research projects. And I will take a few examples, especially from the aerospace industry when I have my presentations today. A little bit short, also would like to introduce you to where we're from. Blekinge Institute of Technology is located in the southeast of Sweden. It is one of the most distinct profiled universities in Sweden, with focus on applied IT and sustainability. And in my research, I have a group of, we are 6 people, and I'm leading this research in sustainable product development. And our common objective is to integrate and implement a strategic sustainability perspective in the product innovation process from strategic, tactical, and operational level. And currently we have a few focus areas that we look into. For example, we look into how we can integrate a sustainability perspective in requirement management, how you can measure a progression towards a more sustainable target, how you can develop a sustainability product portfolio, and also how you can integrate a strategic sustainability perspective in the risk management process, how social sustainability perspective can come in together with the ecological perspective in product development, and how you can support communication of sustainability information to customers to encourage more development of more sustainable products. So if you are interested, you can read more about our research group on our webpage. So now I'm going to move into my presentation. And the title of the presentation today is How Can Engineering Decisions Contribute to a Sustainable Society? Because engineering decisions are important and they can contribute to a more sustainable society. And the question is also, how can we deal with this as we move into the unknown? And what do we actually know about the unknown, so to say? What do we know about the future? Well, maybe not so inspiring, but it's actually true that we have in future less room of opportunities. And that can be illustrated with this funnel metaphor. So how do we know actually that the room of opportunities will decrease with time? Maybe you ask yourself. Well, today we are living in an unsustainable society that is moving in a wrong direction, so to say. And we know that we will have less room of opportunity because we will have less resources among us to share. That will also result in tougher competition between companies and harder legislation. Eventually and hopefully in future we will reach a more sustainable society, and then the room of opportunities may increase again. But this is a fact, and then you may ask yourself, how do we know we will have less resources to use? We can just look into some examples of areas where we can see that we are using up many of the resources today. As we know, we're using up, of course, non-renewable resources, but even the renewable resources we use up in a very high pace, which makes it hard for the ecological system to rebuild itself. So we, for example, can see that we have increased the loss of tropical rainforest and woodland. We do overfishing. The amount of domestic land is increasing, and the species extinction is increasing a lot from the last 50 years. And also, I think many of you recognize some of the problems that we can see or maybe encounter ourselves. Extreme weather conditions, extreme fires, social problems and refugees, and also an environment that is not that, that we can see that we have made harm on the environment. For example, while we're doing raw material extraction. A group in Sweden, in the Stockholm Resilience Center, have identified the planetary boundaries, as they call it. And these systems are very important for our survival on the planet. And as you can see, some of them are reaching the red area, which is close to a tipping point. And when you reach the tipping point, basically it's impossible to return, and the damage cannot be repaired. So this means that we should try to be aware that we are soon reaching more of these tipping points, and then we will have a more inconvenient future. So that we can see here is that we have nutrient leakage, and also the genetic diversity is soon reaching these tipping points. So of course there are no doubts that we are living in an unsustainable society and that we need to move this into the right direction. We can also see that the younger generation is more aware and eager and put a lot of expectations and demand on world leaders and probably also in future company leaders, as we can do a change. But before it's possible to make a change, we also need to understand what we mean with sustainability, where we are moving, where are we going. And for many companies, they recognize these three dimensions that was defined by John Elkington in 1994. And it is described in three dimensions: economical dimension, so long-term financial health of the enterprise; ecological dimension, do no harm to the environment and restore the environment from harm already done; and also the social dimension, how the company treats the employees. However, I would say that these three dimensions should be described into a circle that they are nested interdependencies. So basically it means like the company is part of the social system, which is part of the environment. And the environment will do fine without the social system and the business, but not the other way around. So for the company to be sustainable, it also means that the other two dimensions need to be sustainable. So the company needs to understand how they can contribute to a more sustainable social system and a more sustainable ecological system. And that is a way to be more specific about what we mean with sustainability. And research have been conducted in this area for a long time, and to explore, so what are actually the root causes for destroying these two systems? So what are the mechanisms of destruction of the ecological system? And three of these mechanisms have been identified, and these have been translated into overarching sustainability principles. So for the understanding what the conditions are for the ecological systems, or the overarching sustainability principles for the ecological system, it can be described like this. So in an ecological sustainable society, nature is not subject to systematically increasing concentrations of substances extracted from earth crust. For example, scarce minerals and metals, fossil fuels. And nature is not subject to systematically increasing concentrations of substances produced by society. For example, chemicals that have a long life and non-biodegradable. And also nature is not subject to systematically increasing degradation by physical means. For example, overfishing, deforestation, etc. And in a very similar way, the mechanisms of destroying the social system have been identified, and also overarching sustainability principles for the social system have been then described. So they say that in a social sustainable society, people are not subject to structural obstacles to health, influence, competence, impartiality, and meaning making. So for example, it means like a structural obstacles to health means that you should not be prevented to protect yourself from dangerous working conditions, for example. And influence, for example, by suppression of free speech. And note structural obstacles to competence, for example, by obstacles for education. Impartiality, for example, by discrimination. And meaning making by, for example, by suppressing of cultural expression. And these 8 overarching sustainability principles are very powerful to use together with backcasting. And backcasting means where you start with this wished future state, and then you look back to today and see how do you go there? What are the activities? What are the different solutions that can take you to this desired future situation? So these two pieces together is very powerful in actually creating sustainable vision. And there are very two important pieces in the Framework for Strategic Sustainable Development, also called FSSD. And during the last webinar, Jeremy mentioned them too. The FSSD, or he also called it the Natural Step Framework. Some people recognize it as that. And especially backcasting from sustainability principles have been very useful in my research and in the research I conduct also now. So this is a good starting point, at least, to understand how we can understand what we mean with sustainability, and also is a way to actually maybe create new innovative solutions and try to think a little bit more radically. Because if we actually going to change this unsustainable society to a more sustainable society, we need to think more radically. We have to rethink more radically than we are prepared to do today. And in order to do that, we may need support in order to actually to rethink and be more radical. So how will companies actually do that? How can they come up with more radical new innovations that can also give them a competitive advantage? And of course, it is very important that a first step is, of course, to understand and have a common view what we mean with sustainability, and then also be aware of the different challenges that we can encounter. But this is not an easy fix thing. This is actually quite complex. So what we can see today is some very clear trends, and that the companies are trying to meet these trends and also in this way move more towards a more sustainable solution or more sustainable direction. But unfortunately, all these trends also come with some challenges. So if we, for example, start to look at one of the important trends is to improve the efficiency that is needed. We know that from energy perspective, from material perspective, we have to be more efficient. The thing is that if you just focus on that one and think you have solved the problem, you may encounter rebound effects. So the rebound effects mean basically that the improvement that you had expected are not found, because at the same time you are doing an improvement, it is eaten up with something else. It can be a customer or consumer behavior. One typical example is the passenger cars that have been improved a lot. So the fuel efficiency have been increased a lot. That means, of course, that the consumers doesn't have that cost anymore, because the fuels will be less expensive. And it has shown that therefore also some customers or consumers are driving more, or they even buy a bigger car because they have money over. So of course this is a problem, and for product developers it is important therefore to actually consider what are maybe some possible rebound effects if they do an improvement, especially improved efficiency. Is it any other things that they should consider to mitigate this rebound effect? Maybe they need to, if there is a risk, they need to work together with other stakeholders in society. For example, it can be about increasing taxes, pricing, and have new policy that actually influence consumer behavior. And therefore, I think it's important to consider how these engineering innovations also need to be combined with societal tools. Another clear and important trend is digitalization, and there are many good solutions that I think is part of a more sustainable society. One example from the aerospace industry is life tracking system. It means like you basically can see where and which part of the engine that is worn out and that need to be repaired and maintained. And this means that it will be more efficient from a time perspective, material perspective, and also energy perspective, but also safety aspects. And this is much more efficient than have it on static schedules. So there are many of these examples of good digitalized solutions that we can see. However, a challenge with all the data that need to be collected and maintained is that these data demand a lot of energy. And it has actually shown that large-scale data centers today account for about 3% of the global energy consumption. So what needs to be done here is that you need to do and find solutions for how you can store the data much more energy efficient. And today there are research done on this area, looking into how you can find more advanced machine learning algorithms to store the data more efficiently. And also maybe companies need to consider what kind of data they are collecting and why they're collecting these data and how they can maintain the data and so forth, because maybe in future it will be more costly to actually do this and store data and maintain data. Another important and actually also a very common trend, as you know, is to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, and this is very important. And many companies focus on this to try to solve that problem, but if you don't have a system view, it may be actually a risk that you end up with another problem somewhere else in the product life cycle. So one example is also from the aerospace industry, is that if you change the design of the engine and may actually increase the temperature then in the engine to be more fuel efficient, you can end up with have to change to a more critical material. And that would be a problem from availability and sustainability perspective. So critical material means that you will have availability problems from a geo perspective. There are not enough of that element on Earth, so to say. Contribute to social and ecological sustainability problems, and also that the company may be vulnerable because there may only be a few suppliers that actually can deliver that material or that element that is needed in those critical materials. And if the company become dependent on these kinds of solutions, it will be very costly, especially if you need to produce this product with these materials for a long time. So just focusing on one thing without seeing the whole picture, then it's very easy that you end up with sub-optimization. So the question is then, how do we design solutions to avoid sub-optimizations? And for that, the product developers need to have a clear system view. Another important trend is circularity and modularity. It is definitely important to try to find new solutions to have and close material loops. And we as consumers, we need to consume less. We need that we have to have our products for a longer time. The companies know that they need to figure out other value streams, upstream recycling. We need to find other ways for how we can sell our product. It doesn't necessarily need to be that we sell the product, we can sell the function. So we actually sell maybe a product service system instead. And this can enhance and speed up remanufacturing, which will also be very positive from a material circularity perspective. And one part of that could be also to have modules that can be taken back and repaired and maintained and also used for other purposes. So modules for products can be, well, let's say that we have batteries in cars and then these batteries are not good enough for the car anymore. So these batteries can be used somewhere else, maybe in a household, but that would be for another purpose. So then if that is the case, there is a challenge because we may not have optimized these modules or these product components for different functions. So we engineers also need to figure out how you actually what is the most appropriate modularity for the future, considering that we need to shift towards a circular society and we need maybe to meet more than jump function. So with this, I would like to say, okay, is it then possible at all to have sustainable products? Well, if you're positive, you may say yes. And maybe it is a vision rather than a reality, but I think that we all can agree on that it's important to strive towards more sustainable solutions and contribute to a more sustainable society. And that can be, one part of doing that can be to do sustainable product development. And what do we then mean with sustainable product development? Sustainable design is a similar word. What we mean with sustainable product development that we use in my research group, it is when a strategic sustainability perspective, meaning that we have defined the long-term target, the long-term goal, so we know how we can move step by step towards this long-term goal. And also that this thinking or this perspective is integrated and implemented in the early phases of the product innovation process. And this is of course very important that you exclude a life cycle thinking by doing this. So you include all the different phases of the product life cycle and think of how you can get the materials to come back in a circular loop. And all of that needs to be considered early in the product innovation process. That is what we mean with sustainable product development. And in the research group that I'm leading, we have developed a couple of tools and methods in this area. Many of them are not available yet. They are in publications, and our research partners are using some of the tools that we have available. So if any of you are interested in some of the tools that we have, you're welcome to contact us, and at least we can send you some of the material, and especially we have it also printed in publications. We have about a set of maybe 15-20 different tools, but I'll show you only 3 examples now. On strategic level, we have developed a self-assessment method for sustainability implementation in product innovation. And this is a tool to assess and visualize the company's current sustainability maturity level. We have on tactical level, I did this during my postdoc period, defined something called sustainability design space. And this is a tool to actually identify what are the long-term prioritized sustainability aspects for the company solutions. And also, in order to know where you are, you have developed a way to measure that in a qualitative way. So it means like you can find out what degree a concept performs in relation to a more sustainable solution using these long-term sustainability aspects or criteria. And on operational level, then you come down to more detailed level, maybe specific questions that some engineers have. And as we have been working with, also as I said, the aerospace industry, we came into in one project into a task to develop and see if it was possible to develop a material criticality assessment method that can be used early in the product innovation process. So this is a tool actually that we developed in an action research approach that is actually defining for alloys, which are the most critical alloy from availability and sustainability perspective. So why is this then, or should be, important for industry? Well, of course, it is about avoiding cost, both in short term but also in long term perspective. increase in competitiveness is very, of course, obvious for some companies that it is important for that. Stricter legislation, it's also to avoid stricter legislation and also be prepared for new consumer or customer requests. Energizing employees is very important, especially I think with the new generation, much more aware and demanding and have high expectations that leaders take their responsibility today. And also for the company it is to have a good brand value and create trust among in the market, I would say. And of course, new innovations. It's a possibility actually to create new innovations. So the future will demand more proactive companies that are brave enough to meet all the different challenges and follow the trends, but also be very strategic in the choices and decisions that are taken, so that you, at the same time, the companies can be strong at the market, but also showing the way towards a more sustainable solution. So if we all move in the right direction and are brave enough to meet these challenges, we hopefully are able to meet a more sustainable society in future. So thank you for this. That was my presentation for today.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Sophie. We do have lots of questions to you already, and I want to start with the first one. It is from Yuri, and I guess it has to do with your sustainability principles. So the question here is, have you experienced misalignment between your academic view on sustainability and the company's concept of sustainability?
So if we have encountered
misalignment between your academic view of sustainability and the principles and the way that companies understand sustainability.
Yes, I would say that I think the easiest way to meet is to start with the 3 dimensions of sustainability, to also explain how we see that they have nested interdependencies, and then starting from that, it is easier then to also explain why the sustainability principles are needed. But it's not that easy just to give them the principles and say, okay, now you have the principles, now you know what sustainability is, and now you can develop sustainable solutions. So this is not really, this is what we have seen, it's not really the way we should do it. We need to concretize the sustainability principles, and we have done that in different ways. Some of the tools that we have developed, we have used the sustainability principles as guidance in creating guided questions for the companies to use, and then we have put them into to methods and given that kind of support to companies. Then it makes them more concrete. The same with the sustainability design space. It's also a way to concretize sustainability criteria, but they are guided with sustainability principles. So there is no contradiction, but I think it's not really that the principles are very easy to use as it is in product development.
Perfect. And then we have a question that I guess is connected to that one from Steve. You mentioned a lot about companies implementing sustainability into the way they design products. But is there a demand for that? And are companies interested in actually implementing sustainability in design?
I think it's a good question. If the companies are interested in developing sustainability in design, yes, I would say that I can actually show you maybe an extra slide that I have, which is based on a survey that we did for a couple of years ago, where we interviewed and have a questionnaire. We had contact with 300 and product developers, engineers, and managers. And I have some citations that I have on this slide, saying that the requirements to phase out substances will increase sharply in the future, and our preparedness is not on the level it should be. I think that it is of key importance for the future and for the future generations to put as much as possible focus on these topics, and we need to be competitive as a company when a sustainability index is included by the customer in the supply evaluation. And I think that especially in the product development stage, there is a great potential to influence sustainability parameters of our products. So I think that we got many of these kinds of citations showing that there is an interest to implement. It's a worry, you can see like an urgency, and even mean some hope and potentials they can see, but doesn't mean that they know exactly how to do it. So I think the interest is there to implement and willingness, but how to do it with taking care of all other aspects, of course, that they need to take care of when they develop
I guess that
the
it's
products.
a very nice link to the next question, also from Steve, because he's asking for examples on how you can use the sustainability principles in product design to actually do those and develop more sustainable products. Could you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I would like to go back maybe to some of the tools I mentioned. The sustainability design space is actually one way to help out in defining what we mean with sustainability on a more concrete level. I see I have a slide here describing the sustainability design space. And it is created in this way that you have the long-term sustainability target. And this could be, for example, not to use any critical materials in your products, which may be very difficult today for some companies. And therefore, they are together and grouped together with some tactical sustainability design guidelines. And the sustainability principles have been used to identify the long-term sustainability targets. The tactical sustainability design guidelines, they come from the branch, industry branch, the company requirements and standards. So then they are grouped together in a specific process, and that in itself creates these criteria. And when these are used, you can actually support, and when you have this design space, you can also support and identify indicators, specific indicators that you can use to measure how good you are at different indicators. So there are like many support tools that can be used to actually make a change. I think that it may be even that the material criticality method that I explained very briefly are even more concrete in these aspects. For that is a tool that actually can support you in identifying directly which of the alloys are having less criticality if you go on more detailed operational level.
Right, and I guess you mentioned about indicators and how to measure that. And the next question from Tim is connected to this. So his question is, how do the sustainability principles or the FSSD, the principles, align with the UN Global Compact goals or with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals?
Mm-hmm. So you could see that the SDGs altogether could be seen as a framework to how we need to move society also in the right direction. But they are on a very kind of another level. Their sustainability principles are more overarching level, so they're not contradictory at all. The SDGs, then you can, I would say that you can select an area. Maybe you select industry and processes, or more sustainable consumption and production is SDG 12, I think it is. Then if you are selecting that area, then you may actually I think use the FSSD framework and the principles in the different approaches to try to find solutions for these areas, in the SDGs areas. So I think in different ways they can be, we can use the FSSD in different ways, either as the whole framework, seeing that, okay, this is the main target, we have the FSSD, the sustainability principles, and as a support in guiding us towards a more sustainable society. And then we use the SDGs, the different areas there, to move them also in the right direction. But when doing that, to move these SDGs in the right direction, we should and can use these sustainability principles from a backcasting perspective in different support tools.
Yeah,
I think.
Great. I get that his reflection, he continues saying that it would be good to have some form of mapping. As many companies know, both the SDGs and the UN Compact goals. So this could be a way of showing them the connections. And I have one more question from Morten. And this is connected to the circular economy element that you mentioned before. So his question is, how do you best approach and incentivize the industries that have the biggest benefit coming from a linear economy or resource chain and are therefore reluctant to embrace circularity?
I think that one important one possible way to influence or inspire to change is actually to be able to show scenarios where you actually can also include a value perspective, maybe a risk perspective. So that is also what my PhD students work on right now, to see how it's possible to create scenarios and include a risk perspective, both from a sort of kind of negative consequences risk, but also opportunities. And if you can bring that in and connect that with more business view thinking, it will be easier to understand that it will probably in the long run be more economically more beneficial for the company to move into that like direction. And I think therefore it's kind of important to try to translate the sustainability, socio-ecological sustainability benefits to business benefits.
Yeah, and in our next webinar as well on May, we'll be talking more about circular economy and how ready companies are to make this transition. And it might well be that for some sectors, circular economy is not the right sustainability strategy to implement. And there might be some others that makes more sense for them. Yeah, and then we have one more question, Sophie, from Jeremy. And this is about your strategic tools. So his question is basically 3 different questions in one. The first one is, can you say more about your strategic self-assessment? Then the second question is, how quantitative is it? And then the third one is, how does it connect to the low level of design decisions?
The first question, I can say that the SUM for SIP, that we call it, is actually based on 8 key elements that were identified in another research project before. And from that, we identify which are the key elements that actually are important in order for the company to integrate and implement a sustainability perspective in product development, the product innovation process. So based on that research, we developed these 8 templates. And these templates are not quantitative at all, they are qualitative, and that is, I think, in a way typical for working in the early stages of the product innovation process, where you don't have enough data and quantitative data. So many of the support tools become more qualitative. But it is using some qualitative measurement levels, and these are kind of similar to a technology readiness level that you can, so they are described. Now you cannot really see the details here, but which level they are describing what is needed to reach that level. But it's qualitative. The lower level in design, I think what maybe you mean how they can, this is maybe useful for product developers. So one of the key elements is about support tools. One of the key elements about is supplier or procurers. So some of the key elements are more specifically, I think, important for those working on an operational level, but they are meant to be used to know how the company can be more strategic and how to put on some really important activities or support tools in order to support the company to integrate and implement a sustainability perspective on the operational level. For the operational level, there may be other questions that and other support tools that may be more useful.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Sophie. I guess we have no more time for questions, unfortunately, but I'd like to thank you so much for a very nice presentation and also for a nice discussion. Do you have any final recommendations for companies and for researchers and people in general on how to make our engineering decisions more sustainable?
That's a good question. I think that I think well, it is so big question. I don't know how I should answer that question. But I mean, in the recommendation is to increase the awareness, increase the competences, contribute with the collaboration, and also be part of research projects. So it actually means that we can support companies more and be so that these companies can be more proactive. I think a collaboration also in the value chains are very important to find new value streams, and also to dare and be brave enough to try to create new innovations and find and use maybe EU funding also to start new projects, because I think all of these different pieces need to come together somehow.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Sophie. Thanks everybody for participating and also joining the discussion. This is the second webinar that we are having in the series. If you couldn't see the first from Jeremy, you are welcome to have a look at our website. It's it is there already online available. And in about a month, on the 28th of May, there will be another webinar, and this one will be on circular economy, and it's based on a readiness assessment that we have developed at DTU that measures how ready companies are for circular economy. We have more than 200 companies in the database, and on that webinar we're going to discuss what are the dimensions companies are mostly ready on, and what are the ones that we need to work a little bit further to accelerate the transition. So I invite you all to join our next webinar on May, and we keep in contact. So thank you so much for today, and see you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.